Hello and welcome to another episode of The Lion's Den. My name's Toby Bennett from Black Crow Gaming, and we are going to be talking about Dark Angels in teams. I'm sure many people, if you follow competitive 40k, are getting very excited about the WTC format, which is an 8-man teams where some of the best players in the world all compete against each other. There's also War Masters before, which is the singles event where all the best players in the world again compete against each other, and that's going to be super exciting. Obviously, I'm cheering on the England boys. But there is loads of good friends of mine that are going to be there from like Scotland, Wales, all sorts of other nations, and super excited to see them all hopefully do really well. So good luck to everyone competing. But that's got a lot of people excited about the teams format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about where Dark Angels sit within the teams format and how they can be leveraged the best. So if you're over in the States, you might have seen that I think it was called like the US Cup or something like that. That was a 5-man teams event recently. And then obviously if you are based in the UK like myself, this weekend there is the International Teams Tournament up in Birmingham this weekend, which is the UKTC's event. I think it's the last one of this season, the UKTC season that is. Slightly different dates to the ITC season, and that will be the last one, and it's going to be a 5-man teams format, just with their standard mission pack. There's no light or heavy terrain, which is a slight difference because usually there is an art to kind of working out which maps you're best to be on, but instead this time, because they've only just done an update of the map pack and it's quite a major update, I think they're just keeping it simple and just taking that feedback as it comes in to try and work out how people can best improve. So in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about our singles woes and why things maybe aren't going the best for Dark Angels in singles. We're hopefully not going to dwell on that too long, but I do just want to touch on it because in all honesty, I'm hoping for an update reasonably soon. It doesn't look the best for Dark Angels. I know that StatCheck had them in their F tier and the bottom of F tier at that. So that was quite a tough nut to swallow. And I'm a little bit gutted about the position of where Dark Angels are at the moment, even though I still love Wrath of the Rock, and I do still think they're really awesome in many ways. But let's say your only army is Dark Angels, or you're like me and you just absolutely love Dark Angels. How do you leverage them in team events? How can you actually not be a letdown to your team and really push on through, even though we're a little bit in the dirt at the moment? Because no one wants to let their team down in teams events, and making sure that you kind of know your role and play your role as efficiently as possible, I think really helps. Then how to support your captain, how to really impact around that preparation, how to give them the help they need on the day, and sort of what my process has been to just try and make sure that my captain is armed with as much information as they can be, and what I want to do for my captain. And then finally, why you should play Dark Angels at teams. Ultimately, I think it is a little bit of a choice of love, because if you're here, you probably really enjoy Dark Angels. I know I really enjoy Dark Angels. They aren't the best Space Marine faction, and at the moment you can only bring one Space Marine. If you are going to absolutely smash it and you're comfortable playing lots of different armies, you're probably more likely going to have your Space Marine player as either Space Wolves or Blood Angels, and fair play. But if you are sort of a die-hard Dark Angels fan, then it's certainly here's some reasons on why you should be playing those Dark Angels. And it's kind of what swung me round to it in the end, because I was looking at Blood Angels lists towards this ITT. But then kind of once I'd shaped what role I needed to play within my team, it made me firmly sort of opt for the Dark Angels in the end. I say firmly, it was very much my team going, shut up and play Dark Angels, while I panicked in the corner about them not being good. So without further ado, let's get the negatives out of the way early and then try and stay positive for the rest of the video. So win rate has stayed quite low. What's the reason for that? Well, I mean, there is an element that we are still trying to discover what like a best build of a particular army is. I've had some success with my kind of like Ancient Weapons Captain and 15 Deathly Knights core with Samael and some bits like that. I know that some people have been trying the Lion. I still don't think it's efficient enough to play the Lion, sadly. I really wish it was, because I really want to play him. But I think there's still a little bit of confusion and people picking suboptimal pieces. I know that I've definitely picked some suboptimal pieces as I've gone through. I've really shifted in terms of what I wanted to play, what I thought was good for Dark Angels, all that kind of thing. I do still think Wrath is our best option. Is it better than Gladius? I mean, in a vacuum, no. But for Dark Angels, yes, I think it is. And I think it does something very different and presents a different problem to our opponent, which is quite good. And I think it helps that actually it's not seen as much for making that problem difficult to solve. But I think the major thing right now is that the points are just a little bit too high. Across the board in this meta, it's all about efficiency. You look at, I know obviously this is an extreme example and we know that they're a really chief offender, but Death Guard, for example, for the cost of Deathwing Knights, get one of their 3 damage drones, a standard Blight drone or Mephitic Blight Hauler, and a squad of Poxwalkers. And that's crazy just for the cost of a Deathwing Knight unit. They are just so cheap. Knights as well, obviously extremely cheap at the moment. Even Blood Angels. Now I know we've got access to Vanguard vets and we do leverage them. But when I was looking at Blood Angels armies for Liberator Assault Group, I was comfortably getting 70 jump packs in a list and then having space for other options as well. So, you know, I was still having my full skirmish with like scouts and everything like that. I was having my ballistae to keep people honest, all that kind of stuff. So it was like, it felt a little bit crazy when I was then going back to Dark Angels and going, okay, well, I've got 750 points spoken for already. Then obviously you've got to put Azrael in, then you've got to put someone to babysit Azrael in. It just felt like that the points were not there. And that was a bit difficult. So I question how expensive we are in the context of the rest of the meta. Now that can be solved in one of two ways. It can be our points that come down, or it could be the wider army's points that considerably go up. Either one, and suddenly we're cooking again. I would prefer it if points went up across the board. I don't think us having more resources is... Well, I mean, obviously it's nice, but like, just... I think you get to a point where you have too many resources like Death Guard and then you're just waiting for your nerf. Or like literally what we did, where we were waiting and suddenly our army went up like 100 and something points. I mean, we went up a ridiculous amount, which really, really sucks. But, you know, it is what it is. There's still those fixes there. But in slightly more positive, I do think there are shells starting to emerge. Obviously, I've had some success with some Wrath builds, done a couple of videos on them, and I think that Wrath catches people with their pants down. I know that it's maybe not the best into this meta. If I played like 5 games of versus Death Guard and Knights like the entire time at a GT, like I think that's going to be a really tough GT. But equally, if you played 5 games against the top army in the meta at any GT, at any point in the history of 10th, like that's probably going to be a really tough GT anyway. Like I know if in the previous meta, if I'd played 5 games against Ultramarines, Gladius, and what's it called, Ynnari, particularly Ynnari, then I would have really struggled. So there's a lot to be said, I think, about the different lists and like just this meta being quite hostile, but I do think that there are shells emerging. And to be honest, I'm really excited about the list that I'm playing this weekend. I think it's strong. I think it's got a lot of elements that I really like. But more importantly, it does what I really need it to do in teams. So that segues us nicely onto the next piece. So what are we in teams? So I think there's a couple of different things that you can do within teams, and I think it's nice that Dark Angels have that option with the teams. Traditionally, and I think this is where Wrath really plays well, we are a blunting powerhouse. So having a strategy like Leonin Aggression really supports that ability to just control that pace of the game, control that primary, and really kind of, your opponent knows exactly what you're doing, which is why I can release a video like this before I go into a teams event, because everyone knows what I'm doing. Like, it's not subtle. It's about as subtle as a bull in a china shop. However, how they stop it is an entirely different matter. But the nice thing is there's so many little tricks as well along the way that you can catch your opponent out with, and you can have them sort of on the back foot to prevent more of that, more points being scored from them, and just build that points differential, or at the very least just stop them from scoring. And you might not score as well, but if you both score 0 points, it's a 10-10, and that's 10 points for your team still, right? Obviously that's an extreme example, that's not going to happen, but you know what I mean. I think the sentiment is there, and it's all about that controlling of pace, which is something that I really like doing in singles as well. I really like that kind of, it's very gutsy in its approach. It stands there, it goes, I am obvious in what I am doing. There is no subtlety to this strategy. Can you solve that? And I think there's elements where then you can bring in a subtlety to it. But for the most part, it is just, can you chew through this before I chew through you? And for the most part, the answer's no, because we've got the tricks to kind of chew through them. They have to come and play that attrition game with us, and then they start struggling. And something I love with Dark Angels in teams, and it's why there's a running joke that I'm always the first offender, is it fires that warning shot. It presents such a threat to your opponent that you go, right, I am here, I am going to take your best player, and I am going to force them to not score that many points. And I want to see how your team react emotionally to the player that they expect to push and do really well, not doing that well. It's a really interesting little mindfuck that kind of pushes the team down a certain way, and then suddenly other players are starting to think, how do they need to push? How can they try and get more points for their team? Excellent. Great. That's going to open up weaknesses that your actual pushers can take advantage of. And I mean, I think a lot of that is subconscious, and a lot of that is maybe I'm just making that up in my brain. Do people communicate that much in games? I know I don't. So, that maybe is cloud cuckoo land. But I think there is that element of, you get to fire that warning shot over at your opponent and go, hey, I'm here. You're not scoring that much. And I think there's armies that are better at doing that. I think the guard recon armies are really, really good at doing that. I love that army. I think it's hilarious. Just having 200 odd guardsmen with 3-up saves, reactive move, and reducing charges is stupid fun. Really, really cool. But there's definitely elements where this can also, if your opponent screws up, you can really turn the pace around on them and go, you thought I was a blunter, now I'm going to push. And it's why a lot of people seem to, when they try and pair into us sort of in the later rounds and they've seen scores, they view me as a pusher rather than a blunter. And that's always a really interesting element, because I'm like, well, no, my job is to take your player that's scary. That's where I like to be. That's what I like to play. I like to take the biggest challenge and take them down. And not necessarily just take them down, but just not let them score that many points. One of the games that I'm most proud of is when I took 8 points off of Nassim at the last teams of last year in our round 3 against War Masters, and I got 8 points out of the guy. That to me was awesome. It was on take and hold. It was against Guard when they were really, really good, and he got bottom of turn as well. So it was bottom of round even, you know what I mean. So to get 8 points there, I was ecstatic. I'd done my job. I'd not let someone get the points that they were meant to get. So excellent. That felt really impactful. But being able to do things like that, I really like in teams. And I think that kind of leads us nicely into how you can support your captain going forward, because you can be the person that goes, cool, give me the matchup that everyone's scared of. I don't mind. I've got loads of 4-up saves. I've got loads of 2-up saves. I'm going to sit back, have a go. That's fine. Do not worry. I'm going to keep this close. And that, just to give your captain that option, I think is just so freeing for them, because it then means that they can focus more on those other pairings. They don't need to worry about you. And half the time, I don't even get involved in pairings past just putting my matrix in. I just go, cool, this, done. And then my captain knows we can give him anyone. Fine, no problem. And that is why a lot of the time I end up first defender, because I just don't care what I go against, because I'm doing the same thing. My strategy does not change. I am going to be gutsy. I am going to be ballsy. I think there's a slight caveat to that. There's one army that changes it at the moment. I'm not going to say which army, but there is an army that changes it, and I quite like the way that I change it into that. But it frees up your captain's cognitive processes as well to focus on those other matchups, which I just think is so helpful in a team's context. I'm not an expert in teams. I am trying to learn. I had the sort of the luck and the joy of playing a teams with Team Glasshammer, and sort of getting to learn a little bit from Manny, who is obviously probably the greatest living Warhammer player. And it was awesome to be able to start getting all the tips and tricks from him. And that's helped me kind of shape my game. But equally, it's nice, I think, to be able to just present this problem solver for your team of I'm going to cover those weaknesses because I can survive, or I can do X, Y, Z. And, there's an element where actually you can look at different ways that you can cover weaknesses. So maybe you pile in a bunch of bikes and things like that. If you're all infantry and suddenly you want something that's a little bit different, cool, loads of bikes. Or if you're going for loads of survivable vehicles, you can get a bunch of 2-up save vehicles and a Dark Shroud. That's a genuine option. 15 Deathly Knights, bunch of Dreadnoughts, maybe some Vindies, and a Dark Shroud. In singles, it's probably not doing amazing. In teams, it's almost certainly giving you a draw every round. Those are the kinds of things that go through my head when I'm building that list, which is why you'll always see, apart with one exception of the Stormlance list, where it was just the raw power level I thought that I had with it in the last kind of couple of ITTs, my list didn't really change, but usually my list does change for teams because of that. But again, I am not some really talented teams player. This is just my personal experience. There are far better and far more experienced teams players out there. Your stat check guys, Mind Goblins are obviously extremely talented. Ignite, so Fireside Chat with David and Vic, also lovely guys as well. So there's a lot of different players that can give a lot better insight than myself. They'll have played at the WTC, all that kind of thing. They've got that quality. But this is my experience as someone that goes and plays in 5-man teams with Dark Angels. So take it for what it is. I always say predict conservatively when you're doing your matrix, because if you score more than you said, cool, great, excellent, no problem. That's good news. But if you predict conservatively, it just gives your captain a little bit more scope for if things go completely tits up, you can still get that score. And I think that just really helps them. And I know that there's an element I've seen, and I did some teams prep for Black Crow earlier this week, and I saw people going, I think I can get this score. And then, they were getting a couple of points differential points lower. And it feels a little bit like they were kind of fronting. But that shouldn't matter. The accuracy of the data that you put in on your matrix is far more important than saying, I can get a 12 on that when you'd probably only get a 9. Or, I can get an 8 on that when you get a 4. That kind of thing is super impactful. And if you help your captain in finding that right data, you're going to be in a far better position, because also it's going to be able to let that captain know which matchup might need to push a little bit more, or which matchup can sort of sit off a little bit more and just not risk getting 20, that kind of thing. I think there is an element where I would say don't go fully defensive, because I know in the last ITT, every single round, I had my captain come up to me and go, we need you to push. And every time I was like, I'm the blunter, I've taken the matchup that people didn't want. This is a little bit stressful. Stressful might be the wrong word, but like, I need the ability to switch if my team demand it of me. So having the ability to go, cool, I know that my job is to blunt, and that's absolutely fine. And if your captain can guarantee in like 8-man teams, maybe they can guarantee that you're just going to be blunting every single game, and that's fine. But having an element where suddenly if you can get some leverage, that you can twist that leverage and really go for it. Like Deathwing Knights are very good at doing that because they're just super survivable on objectives, but also they can hit like a truck when they need to. But just having that little bit of something extra, just to push you above and beyond, could definitely really help. So don't just get like blinkered by the idea that you're a blunter. Like, yes, you're a blunter. However, don't just think that you're always going for those 10-10s. There's going to be times where you can twist it and you can suddenly go for those, those higher scores. With challenger cards at the moment, I think it's less and less likely that we're looking at 20s. I think challenger cards make 20s nigh on impossible. But there's definitely still scope for like your 17s. So, have the ability to switch gear, go up a second, and if you can leverage player advantage as well in that kind of situation, all the better. Okay, finally, so why should you play Dark Angels at teams? I think it's that freeing up your captain's headspace. I think just being able to go, cool, any of them, that's fine, don't worry about it. Whoever you don't want to play, give them to me. That really, really helps the team out. Just having someone that has the kind of list, and I think Dark Angels are great at that, just having the balls to just go, no, we're going to stand here, we're going to stop you, not a chance. Like, it really has some impact. And I mean, it's partly why I love Dark Angels, because they are this gutsy front line. I think if anyone's read or listened to The Purging of Cadalus, and I know obviously we're talking about competitive and I'm about to start talking about lore, but that idea of them just holding the line, and then that counter attack towards the end, just like by inspiring guardsmen, but also by leading it themselves, it's absolutely beautiful. And like, that is Dark Angels to a T for me. And that's why I love the role. Like, I love that. Like, those are the odds that you're up against. You're going to stand up to them. Maybe that's just my mindset, and maybe I'm giving a little bit too much of insight into my life and my life experiences in that. But there's something that really appeals, and I think it might in some ways be an English thing about the appeal of the underdog. But also, like, Dark Angels underdog, like, it doesn't really make sense. They're meant to be, like, the best at most things, all that kind of stuff. However, I really like that element to them. And I think the lack of people playing Dark Angels at the moment, it really plays into our hands. People don't know how to predict into them because they've probably not had the reps into them. Admittedly, that's a double-edged sword, because we've not had that many reps with Wrath of the Rock. And we've not had that many reps into this meta. Well, actually, you might have. I don't know what your free time looks like. But I know I haven't, so it makes life a lot more difficult. And I would say that I have a lot more time for Warhammer than other people that, like, maybe have families that they have to look after, or other jobs that might be take up weekend time, etc., etc. But I think that does help us, that Dark Angels are able to go, well, I'm a little bit of an unknown quality, and I think that's great. And then finally, I think building on that point, there is that element of like these really spicy skew builds that you can go for. So obviously we've seen Hunters, Champions of Hunters, or whatever it's called, Company of Hunters, I think it's called. As you can tell, because I don't know the name, I don't really care for it. But like, there's an element where if you turned up with a ton of bikes, that's an interesting spam option. Like, it's quick, yeah, sure, it's not using the terrain the best, but there's merit to it. And if you're expecting like loads of anti-infantry and anti-vehicle keyword, like, okay, spicy. And I think particularly like if there is a lot of anti-infantry keyword running around, I don't think there is in this meta, but if there is, like say there's even more Death Guard Flamers and there's loads of AdMech and all that kind of stuff, then suddenly like bike spam feels kind of tasty, because I remember one of the most impactful things that I had in a game, funnily enough, was actually teams, was Lilith having to run at Outriders. And Lilith is, I think, the main threat out of Drakari that can hurt Deathwing Knights. And she is the unit that I am kind of scared of when I go into Drakari. And the fact that her unit of her and 10 witches only killed 2.5 bikes, them being Outriders, was huge. And it's because she was wounding them on 5s rather than 2s. It was so impactful. So, like, you know, there is some really interesting spicy skew that you can do. We have access to, like, those Deathwing squads that are super, super tanky. We have access to some, like, interesting enhancements. I know, like, Deathwing Assault is quite an interesting enhancement. I personally wouldn't be playing it. I don't think it's that good, especially on Deathwing Knights. But, like, there's a world where I put it on an Ancient with 10 Assault Terminators with Hammer and Shield, and just go, cool. They're gonna sit on this point, and come get it. And also, if you happen to draw Cull the Horde, have fun. Oh, actually, no, I think that's changed now. But, like, if you happen to want to have that objective, no. In fact, there is 22 OC on there of 2 up save, 4 up invulnerable, and 4 wounds. Beautiful. So, you know, I think there's a lot to be said for things like that. So, you know, you can get spicy and skew how you're playing, throw off your opponent, confuse them, make life difficult for them. So yeah, there's a lot of really good reasons to play Dark Angels, and a lot of really good reasons to play Dark Angels that I don't take advantage of. Like, that bike list could very easily be a pusher. And for GW terrain and things like that, maybe that works even better, because there's a lot more space, you can get across the board really quickly, all that good stuff. So yeah, like, there's a lot that you can do, and there's a lot that people won't expect. So if you are playing Dark Angels because you love them, leverage that love and leverage that skill level that you'll have as a player to kind of really go above and beyond. So I think that's the main takeaway right now. Yes, we are struggling in singles, but I think that's because we need to, as a play group, leverage that skill and force our opponent to play the game that we want to play. And I think Dark Angels have always been very good at doing that. So maybe that's the option. And I think that's really what people should be taking away from this. Anyway, I've rambled on for long enough. I'm going to thank our sponsors. They're all wonderful. So thank you, Glasshammer. Use code BlackCrow for 5% off. Thank you to Rainforge. Use code BCG5 for 5% off. Thank you, Trident FutureWorks, for our lovely, lovely cases. I think that's all our sponsors, probably. Thank you so much to all my teammates, and I cannot wait to the ICT this weekend. Come and say hi if you're there. I'll be running around in Crow Team 6. We've got some lovely friends from 6++ for our round 1 tomorrow. Really, really looking forward. Not tomorrow, it's Saturday. Tomorrow's Friday. But really looking forward to that round. There's some really good friends of mine. Some of them that I played in my first ever tournament, and then others that I played at other tournaments, but also just guys that I love hanging around with. So super excited to have what will be a very fun, chilled out round 1. So super looking forward to that. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. You can go and join our Discord and all that kind of shit in the links below. Thanks to Dr. J for providing me with a beautiful thumbnail, as always. The man is a godsend. And then finally, stay loyal, fuckers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week after the ITT. Cheers. Bye.